Hello landlords, it's Ernie, I'm back, and today we're talking all about abandoned personal property. When has your tenant actually abandoned their property? Talking about that today, let's get started. Every single week we are bringing new content to help you protect your most valuable assets. If you enjoy the content that you're seeing here, please give us a like, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. This week we're talking all about abandoned property. When can you declare the personal property left behind in a unit abandoned? Have you ever come across a situation like this and just didn't know what to do? If you have, if you're dealing with it now, comment below. I want to hear what you have to say about it. Sometimes we're led to believe that our tenant has just up and gone. They've taken off and we don't know what to do with the stuff they've left behind. We have to then rely on our own wits, our experience, the lease, maybe communication that you may or may not be getting from the tenant to figure out what to do with their stuff. When can you declare it abandoned? When can you just give it away? When can you pull it out, put it on the curb, and let the trash man handle it? Well, we're going to talk about those things today. The first thing, as I always say to landlords, is to look at your lease. What does your lease say about abandoned property? You may be surprised that your lease has a step-by-step procedure that you can follow already if you find that your tenant has abandoned the leasehold. Maybe they haven't paid rent in a few months and they just took off. Maybe the lease has ended and the new place where they're going, they just don't want the things that they left behind, and so they've left them for you to deal with. No matter what the case, if your lease has a step-by-step procedure, you should follow it first and foremost. That procedure probably says something to the following effect. You can declare the property as abandoned if you know or have a reasonable understanding that your tenant has vacated and abandoned the remaining personal property. You know that your tenant has vacated if, for example, they told you they're leaving, they're done, they're never coming back. That gives you a pretty reasonable expectation that anything they've left behind is abandoned. You may have served them with a notice to vacate, and they did vacate, but they left everything behind. Sometimes, however, your clients are not good at communicating these ideas to you, or you have no reasonable expectation that they were intending to leave. But they've left, and 90% of their stuff is gone. They've given you no indication where they're going or that they went. They won't answer your phone calls anymore, but 10% of their stuff has remained. That's a pretty good indication that the remaining things, especially if you look at it and it's nothing really worth getting excited about, that those things have been abandoned. If you have a reasonable understanding and a reasonable opinion that the property left behind by your tenant has been abandoned, it's based on these pretty clear clues. So the procedure probably goes on to say something to the effect that you can leave a written notice for your tenant, conspicuously posted on the inside, or if you can't get in, you can conspicuously post it on the outside of the main entry door, stating that you now consider the property abandoned, and if the tenant will contact you in no fewer than, say, 2 days, then they can make arrangements with you to claim their personal property and clear everything else out, or to inform you that in fact and confirm that everything is abandoned and can be discarded any way that the landlord chooses. If you have left written notice for the tenant and the tenant has not in fact gotten in contact with you, after 3 or 4 days you've waited a reasonable amount of time and they just haven't contacted you, you can go in and discard their personal property in accordance with the lease, in accordance with the law. However, if it turns out that they do contact you and they say, well, I just need some more time, it's going to take me another 30 or 45 days to go and get there and collect the rest of my stuff because of yada, 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 then the issue comes down to whether or not that's a reasonable expectation for something that you'd have to wait for. Does it make any sense for you to wait 45 days for somebody to come and collect what amounts to garbage, the last 10% of their property? If they have in fact abandoned it and they have not left you a reasonable means for dealing with their abandoned property, you have some thinking to do. What risks do you assume if, for example, they call you with some unrealistic expectation of how to deal with their property, or unrealistic timeline for them coming back and collecting that property, or if, say, they've left these things and it's not really clear that they are gone. Maybe somebody says they're coming back, but it's not them. Maybe they send you a cryptic message that is hard to really decipher, that could mean they're coming back, and maybe it means they're not. The calculation you have to come up with is essentially a two-part calculation. And this is true whether you have this written procedure in your lease or there's no procedure. Some written leases are absolutely silent when it comes to the issue of abandonment, and some residential leases are completely oral, so definitely silent on the issue of abandonment. And so if you have the procedure, or if you don't, you come to a point where you might just have to take a chance with their stuff. Now, you know that if you leave their stuff there and you kind of just babysit it, that's an extremely expensive storage unit. You're using your rent house as a place to keep, again, about 10% of their stuff. Does that make sense in any way? Probably not. And so you make the calculation. If I'm sued for the things that remain here, what is that really going to cost me? Can they even prove that it was reasonable for them to leave this property here when they skipped out on their lease, or they had no reasonable basis to do it on, right? If you agree to do it, that's one thing. But if they say, well, I'm not coming back for a long time, just hold on to my stuff, you have no legal obligation to do that. So because no case is the same, and there is no textbook absolute dictionary definition of what abandonment always is, you may want to seek legal advice when it comes to your specific situation. If that's the case, I do recommend that you look for a landlord-tenant attorney in your local area. If that's something you're interested in discussing with me, you can look in the description below for a way to set up a consultation so that you and I can discuss the issue of abandonment in your case, or any other landlord-tenant matter that comes to you. As always, if you have a question that you'd like for us to answer, don't hesitate to comment below with that question. I routinely personally answer questions all the time that people ask on these videos. If you're interested in more content, there is a video here that YouTube seems to think you would enjoy. Also, if you haven't subscribed, picture of my face right here will lead you right to our subscribe page, and you can become a subscriber. But until next time, landlords, happy leasing.